welcome to the webinar, How Can Leather Businesses Transform Themselves, Repositioning the Industry to Minimize Risks in the New Market Reality, brought to you by ILM in partnership with JBS Kuros and the National Wildlife Federation. I'm Isabella Griffiths. I'm the editor of International Leather Maker, the leading leather industry business information brand. In today's webinar, I'm joined by a group of leading industry panelists representing different industry associations and industry insights from across the world. The webinar aims to shed light on the key challenges on businesses in the wider leather and leather product supply chains and help navigate the new reality post-COVID-19. This webinar is the second of the two-part series that ILM is presenting in partnership with JBS Kuros and the National Wildlife Federation. Part 1, titled How Globally Integrated Supply Chains Can Evolve to Improve Leather Businesses in a Post-COVID-19 World, featuring a different panel of industry experts from different parts of the world, was broadcast last month and is available to listen to on the ILM website. Before we discuss how leather businesses can meet these new challenges, I'd like to introduce today's panel of speakers. First up, we have Luca Boltri, Vice Director of the Italian Tanners Association, UNIC, which officially represents the Italian tanning industry and promotes its interest on national and international level. Luca has wide-reaching responsibilities across a number of UNIC departments, including business strategy, economic analysis, international relations, social dialogue, sustainability, legal affairs, and industrial policy. Next, I'm joined by Mike Redwood, who is a respected industry expert. Mike has been involved in the leather trade for over 50 years. He started as a technician, but has also held a number of posts in general management and in marketing. For the last decade, he has helped with the establishment of Leather Naturally as a promotional arm for the industry and was its lead spokesperson for most of those years. He is still involved in a variety of projects and is also a contributor to ILM with regular thought leadership columns and blogs. I would also like to welcome Robert Perkins, who is the chairman of the British Footwear Association, which promotes, represents, and supports the British footwear industry on international trade, raising its profile and on training and development with over 140 members, from footwear manufacturers to some of the biggest brands and designers. He is also a strategic advisor to the industry and former CEO with 39 years of experience in premium branded footwear and apparel in the comfort and performance segments with companies such as Clarks, Pentland, Hotter, Pittards, and more. He is a global footwear expert with significant leather, materials, product creation, production, and market knowledge. Finally, I'm also joined by Akhil Ahmed Panaruna, chairman of the India Council for Leather Exports, whose goal is to develop and strengthen the leather industry, both in terms of industrial development as well as export growth. He is also the chairman of the Leather Sector Skill Council and director of the National Skill Development Corporation, and holds position in several other industry associations in India, as well as being chairman and managing director of the Florence Shoe Company, which has been a leading manufacturer of finished leather and leather shoes for more than 3 decades, serving international markets such as the US and Europe. A big welcome to all our panelists, and thank you for sharing your views and your vast knowledge with us today. So my first question to the panel is about the impact the pandemic has had on their country's leather and leather product sectors and on its members. Luca, if I start with you, can you update us on the impact the COVID-19 pandemic is having on the leather industry in Italy? What is the status quo currently, a few months down the line from the start of the pandemic?
Well, as you probably know, the Italian government decided to close the economic activities that were not considered as essential from March 25th to the end of April. And the Italian tanneries, the tanning activity was not considered an essential activity, so tanneries were obliged to close down for nearly a month. The reopening, for sure, we as UNIC were pushing the government for try to reopen the tanneries, but only some secondary operations during the lockdown were allowed to be done, just as like receiving raw materials, shipment of finished products, preservation, and maintenance of facilities. Anyway, the lockdown was closed at the end of April, and between April 27 and May 4th, all tanneries were allowed to reopen activities. Well, the first weeks of reopening were mainly dedicated to organize the production facilities in order to guarantee that Tanner's employees can carry out their duties in total safety. So UNIC and the employees' trade unions have done, I think, a very important job to define protocols on the health and safety measures that could support companies on this regard, and it's been a success because Tanner have reopened in total safety and no problems or critical issues have been reported about it. During the first weeks of the reopening, all the orders that were put in standby during the lockdown have been completed, together with those that arrived during the lockdown, very few. The main problem right now is that the industry is lacking orders. I mean, we are lacking orders. I think that our competitors are lacking orders. Our customers are lacking orders. The retail activities are still in a very difficult situation. So I think we still have to be patient and wait for the market to get back to reality, to normal condition. Up to now, we are not in normal condition. Afterwards, maybe I will share some of the economic data that we have in our hands about it.
Excellent, thank you. And Robert, in terms of the footwear trade in the UK and maybe the wider EU and the finished goods side, can you give us an overview of the current situation as well, please? What impact has the pandemic had on the leather and leather products and supply chains?
Yeah, so the UK leather making industry is much smaller than the Italian, obviously, and shoe manufacturing too. But what is the impact has been is all of the factories were closed for 3 months following the announcement in March of the lockdown. So all factories really closed immediately and have been closed for the whole of April, May and June. And it's only really now that things are starting to open up. The big issue is that leather, if you think about the streams in which these leather products flow, footwear is obviously a significant one. Roughly half of the global leather goes into footwear. And across the European market, footwear sales have fallen to absolutely unprecedented levels. So in March, I think retail sales of footwear in the European Union were 50% down. And in April, that increased to over 60% down. So these are not statistics that are in any way common to us. Usually we complain if a market shrinks by 2 or 3%. So it's a very dramatic impact. And of course, it's not just footwear. So the leather industry is suffering from car sales. Automotive sales have been hit and have almost come to a standstill, and upholstery as well. So, and airlines for that matter. So it doesn't really matter which market you look at. All the major markets for leather have shrunk very dramatically in the last 3 months. So we now need to look forward and to see what is in prospect. Retail stores have just reopened this week in the UK. Across the wider European Union, they've been open for a number of weeks. And I think the evidence is that consumers are being extremely cautious. So younger consumers are probably leading the charge back to the retail stores. And you've seen some evidence of stores like Primark with queues outside. But the more mature customer base, especially the customer base who have been told by their governments to stay at home and isolate socially and they're most vulnerable, the over 50s, let's say, then they're going to be cautious. And I think we can expect a very slow recovery across all sectors, but particularly sectors where consumers need to touch and feel the product before they buy, such as shoes. So I think big dip in sales over the last 3 months, unprecedented, and I think it's going to be a very slow recovery.
Mm-hmm. So what are production levels like at the moment for the members of your associations? Are they anywhere near, is there anywhere near enough work to keep them going? Luca, maybe in Italy?
You see, we have official data just about the first 4 months of the year, and if in January and February the production level was down just by 10%, that is more or less the same negative trend that the industry experienced in last year, 2019. March for sure was affected by the fact that COVID appeared in Europe and in our country at first as well. So in March we recorded less 37% on March last year. April was I don't know if it is worth to say it, but it was like less than 93% because tanneries were closed. So these are the official data. May and June, well, we have no official data, but we conducted a survey among our members, and only 20% of the sample said that they have reopened at full capacity. 5% said that they did not reopen. They have not reopened yet. 70% reopened as partial on partial levels. 50% declare that they have less working hours. So as I was saying before, orders are lacking. Orders are lacking. Many tanneries decided to close down some weeks. Some days during the weeks. Very few tanneries declares that they have a good level of order until July, but the overall situation for sure is very bad. It's absolutely worrying, and I think everybody is, as Robert was saying, everybody is aware that probably the recovery will be slow. Because I think the situation is worse than a war. I mean, everything closed down, all the social activities, all the economic activities closed down in the biggest part of the world for 2-3 months. So, and I think that that consumers will need some month more in order, to regain the confidence to get out and buy things, and mainly to get out and buy, I would say, like expensive things, like the product that use leather, like cars, like the sofas, and even if you talk about like fashion, we have to take into consideration that for sure consumers will have less money to spend. There has been a general impoverishment in our society in this last month. We have to face it. We have to take this situation. So I think that maybe some of them, when they will feel confident to get back to shops, maybe they will buy less, but with a better quality. But I think that the biggest majority will buy, like cheapest products. Just because for sure they do not, feel sure to spend the big money in this period, in this uncertainty.
Yeah, we will come back to consumer behavior shortly. We'll cover that. But Robert, just from the EU perspective, what are production levels in the UK right now? Is it a similar picture?
Yeah, it is. As Lucas said, for 3 months, pretty much all these manufacturing businesses were closed down, so there was no production. And whilst many of them are starting the return to work now, it's very tentative. And as Lucas said, there's a real shortage of orders. So if retail sales are 50, 60, maybe 70% down, then you can imagine the effect of that on the supply chain is very significant indeed. So I think it's going to be a slow return to work. A lot of manufacturing businesses have had their staff on the furlough scheme where the government has been paying staff. There's some more flexibility being introduced to that scheme, which allows some people to return to work, albeit on a part-time basis, and that will get the wheels turning and the factories moving. But I think we might be only at maybe 25% capacity at the moment, and I'm not sure it's going to dramatically grow. It's going to take some time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent. Akhil, what is the situation in India currently? How severe has the impact been by the pandemic on Indian leather businesses?
Hi. This pandemic, a health crisis, economic crisis, a natural calamity, we have never seen this. I don't think our generation will see. But unfortunately, it has impacted our business heavily. And all our businesses have come to a halt. And since March 17, our industry has seen almost $1 billion cancellation of orders. It is a unilateral cancellation. But at the same time, our country also were under lockdown from the 25th of March till 17th of May. And then further it was being extended with semi-lockdown until probably end of this month. So which means we are almost locked down and semi-lockdown for almost 4 months. And this has of course impacted our businesses. But however, the orders started coming now, and we are hoping that we will end up the year, I think this annual year, 2020, with probably 30% less than the last year. But I'm having confidence that 2021 will be a progressive year.
Yeah. Mike, if I can bring you in on this, perhaps you can give a more global or holistic view on this. What, in your view, has been the biggest impact on leather supply chains from the pandemic, and what do you think will the post-corona reality look like?
Well, I think the way that the pandemic spread, stopped everything for somewhere between 3 and 6 months. And those sales we will not recover. I think that's accepted. I listened to a presentation 2 nights ago from all the British tanners, and they were remarkably optimistic. But when you look at the extended problems that the United States is having with the virus, and you just look at everything we hear around the world, my personal view is that the hit to business in the future is going to be much greater than we anticipated. And the figures that Robert's mentioning of 50 and 60% losses in sales, we're going to continue to see in quite a few markets for some months yet. Genesco's results yesterday are just typical. They were, I think, 46% down in just the first quarter. And so who knows what their second quarter will look like. So I think it's a tough situation that we're looking at. And I think we will lose a lot of companies, as we're seeing in the retail, where they're over-borrowed, haven't quite got the strategy right, and don't have the cash to get through this crisis. From the tanning side, we have the one huge advantage, which is that raw material costs almost nothing, which is 50% of our cash. So that will reduce the cash outlay going forward. But really, if you don't have a strong balance sheet, getting through the next 6 months, I think, is going to be tough.
Mm-hmm. So, Mike, from your perspective then, do you think that global supply chains will look, or the nature of them will look very different compared from a pre-corona and post-corona world? Will we see different kind of material sourcing and maybe shorter supply chains, maybe more locally manufactured products for more localized and regional markets, perhaps?
Well, I hope so. But, and they were already being disrupted before the pandemic. I think almost everybody was looking at where they should make things, how they should make things over the last 2 or 3 years. A mix of things related to transparency, sustainability, and related to geopolitics and the way consumers are wanting to move. And the United States is on record at wanting to disrupt and damage supply chains. And unfortunately, it seems to have been doing it without an overall strategy. So as well as attacking China, it's been upsetting us in Europe with tariffs. And it's very difficult to follow the American government's actual intentions. My worry right now is that with trade so difficult, that some of the retailers and brands are consolidating and going back to sort of single sources and simple sourcing to get through this phase, so that the kind of hoped for improvements that we're looking for are postponed in some instances while that goes forward. I worry that some excellent factories around the world are being abandoned by brands and retailers and left to their own devices. Some who have invested heavily in really doing an excellent job. And what we're looking at is, short term anyway, a reorganization of supply chains for financial convenience, not for long-term benefit. And hopefully we'll see that twisted to something more thoughtful in the long term before too long.
Mm-hmm. If I open this question up to the other panelists, what do you feel? Will we have different supply chains post-corona? And if so, what will they look like? Luca, what is your opinion?
Well, I think that for sure, in the short term, we will see some differences. That mainly due also to the fact that the virus is having or has had a different impact on a different region of the world, and the development of the contagion has been different, has had a different timing. So I think that some countries will be back to I would say a more normal life before others, and that could lead to, as Mike said, to shorter supply chain. Maybe we can see also some even some reshoring here in Europe. That is a trend that was also active in the last couple of years. That was mainly due to the difficulty in moving. But I think that we will be back to, I would say, to the good old days in the medium term. I think that anyway, less than a year. But for sure with a different speed according to the different country. Some people said that I read on the media. Some people said that the coronavirus it's the end of the globalization. I don't think so. I think that for sure we have been hit very hard by something that we have never experienced before. So something completely new. And I think we are still, in a post-traumatic syndromes, and all the consumers are in this situation. But globalization is not over. I think there is no, no back trend for globalization. It can only improve. So I think we have just taken a full awareness of the fact that we are globalized. Something that was, born in China. In just 3 months, affected Europe and then Americas and so on. So globalization will not change. We will see some differences for sure. I think at least until the end of the year, with as also Mike said, some also more simple sourcing. I mean, the leather trade has been, internationalized for a very long time. Well, in Italy, Italian tanneries export finished leather to more than 120 countries each year. And I'm sure that this data, will characterize the industry also in the next year. The only problem is that at the moment people cannot move, so it's very difficult to have international trade. There are a lot of problems to face about it. So in the short term, for sure, there can be we can see a shorter supply chain. But I think that with the new year, we will gradually see a return to reality, to normal situation.
And Akhil, what in your opinion will supply chains look like post-pandemic? Do you feel there will be shorter supply chains and a shift to more localized sourcing?
See, the supply chain is a big question, because post-pandemic, we are going to find a lot of difficulties because of the short supplies and also the impact had in various countries. The supply chain is not only in India, because it's related to all over the continents and the world. And this is going to be a big challenge for all of us.
Mm-hmm. And Robert, what is your take? Do you envisage a change in the nature of supply chains? Do you agree?
I definitely envisage change. So if you think about the macro position before this COVID thing came along, we had a big shift out of China underway to other countries in the world as Chinese labour costs were inflated significantly over the last 5 years. The consumer is driving our brands towards greater levels of transparency, higher levels of sustainability, and the unpredictability of fashion and demand is demanding more agility. So all of those pressures were in play. Along comes COVID and dramatically changes the sales level. As Mike says, those sales are not coming back. They've gone. And that's a 6-month hole in the year. And I think Mike's comment that there's not a lot of businesses who've got the cash flow to support that sudden shift of demand for such a prolonged period of time. I agree. I think we're going to see a lot of good companies collapse because they won't have the funding to bridge from the old world, where they were already under a lot of pressure on sustainability and ethics and transparency and agility, to the new world where all of those things are in play, and more so in many ways, but actually there's also a much lower level of business to fund these changes. So it's brutal. I mean, it is going to be brutal. I fear it's going to be worse than Luca thinks it might be. And I think consumer confidence from COVID has been dented, but also the furlough schemes around Europe in particular have buffered employment. They've kept people employed. As those furlough schemes come to an end, and they're coming to an end in the UK over the next few months, we're going to see higher levels of unemployment because companies are not going to be able to afford to maintain employment levels. And you've already seen a massive jump in unemployment in the US. So the demand levels we've got are not going to recover quickly, partly because of confidence, partly because of increased unemployment. So yes, I see a very difficult period. And whilst we've proven ourselves capable of resilience, and I agree with Luca that there are some great people out there with many resourceful people and staff and systems, and of course the very best of businesses will survive and prosper. But as Mike says, there's a lot of good businesses out there who just won't make it because they don't have the bridge to get from the old to the new world.
So based on all the points that you've just made, and maybe Mike, I can put this to you, looking from an industry perspective to a more individual business perspective, how can businesses reevaluate their setups and maybe change? What should they change? What can they change to regain that lost market share and to mitigate any long-term effects of this crisis as much as possible at this stage?
Well, I think for the tanning industry, we've got to come out with a positive story. So I think the first thing is that there is a very introverted and negative attitude inside the leather industry. Everyone's attacking us, and we're spending our time being miserable about that. And in fact, we've got a fabulous product, and we need to start promoting it with all its positives. And we need to emphasize, and that means changing a lot of our thinking inside our tanneries and our language, the sustainability, the ethics, the transparency, just as Robert mentioned. And I have always thought it was interesting the way that corporate social responsibility has moved at shareholder level towards the ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And there's a big emphasis now on the S for social, for people, and our role in society. And I think, generally speaking, the best tanneries in the world are very good at that. But we have to emphasize it. We have to actually really start thinking about what we are actually doing, and that gives us the platform, the basis on which we can go out. There's going to be lots of other things that we have to do. IT systems clearly need to be beefed up. We're going to be talking more to consumers. We're going to have to deal with more people who are working from home. We're going to have less opportunities for customers and brands to visit our tanneries. So we have to allow them to visit virtually in one way or another. IT is another great worry of globalization, that it can be attacked and information stolen, and there's a lot going on, and the leather and the footwear and the brands are not immune from that. So we need very, very good IT departments capable of handling that, and we have to make our whole businesses more robust and more resilient, which generally speaking means that shareholders will have to take a little bit less out while balance sheets are improved and the company's strength built up. All the evidence is the shareholders will win in the long term, but short term, getting your people, getting your systems, getting things robust is absolutely vital. And strengthening your marketing and talking a positive consumer-oriented language.
Thank you, Mike. That's some really, really good points there, and a lot of them as well. It's absolutely right. You're spot on. Let's broaden the topic a little bit and come back to the consumer behavior side of things. Obviously, they are a key driver of supply and demand. What is your assessment of how consumer behavior will change and is perhaps already changing and has changed post-pandemic, and how will this affect the leather industry? Robert, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think the reality of our situation is that the market is going to shrink a bit. So I think all the messaging that consumers are getting, whether it be careful with your money because you're nervous, or whether it be from a sustainability point of view of not being wasteful and not buying more than you need. Whichever way you look at the consumer messages at a macro level, I think the consumers are being encouraged to buy less. And we've spent the last 50 years growing all our markets for shoes and handbags and cars and all these other things. And I think the reality is we may have a period now where the volume of sales may decline and shrink a bit. I don't think it's going to be dramatic, but I don't think we can expect growth. But I think it was Luca who said that whilst consumers may be buying less, there is an opportunity for them to buy better. And I agree with that. And I also agree with Mike that the leather industry has got a fantastic opportunity of having a positive message in these difficult times. The truth is, the leather industry has done a pretty poor job at persuading consumers of the merit of the material. And we need to really bump up that storytelling. We need to be confident. I think there's a great story to tell. The truth is, leather shoes last longer, they breathe well, they can be repaired, and there's an enormous sustainability story to be told. But we're not telling that story well enough. So I can already see interest in people repairing shoes. Now, that really has been something that practically disappeared from the 70s onwards. But there is already now people looking again at, do you really need to buy a new pair? Can you just repair the shoes? So I think there's a lot of change going on in the consumer mindset. There's a big opportunity for the leather industry to really get behind some of those trends in a positive way. And I would also add that in Europe, there are going to be some consumers who are nervous of the Chinese sourcing. Trump, whether you like him or you don't like him, there is a voice, a platform that is telling lots of global consumers fairly anti-Chinese messages. I'm not supporting that, but I'm just saying that is the way it is. And therefore, there are opportunities in India, for instance, and in Europe, for those companies to pick up some of the business that may be moving from America, from American brands who source currently from China. So there's a big opportunity. It's not all bad news, but I don't think we should assume that we're going to grow our way into the volumes. I'm with Luca. We're probably going to be selling less volume-wise, but let's try and sell better.
Yeah, that's a good message actually there. Luca, you've already touched on consumer behavior earlier a little bit, but can you expand on this? How do you see consumer behavior developing and impacting the industry?
There has been a general impoverishment of our society, and so yeah, for sure, consumers will have less money, and those that still have money to spend, they are very cautious because yes, maybe they still have a job right now, but with uncertain situation, and as Robert was saying, or Mike, I don't remember, who knows what will be the development of companies in the next month, because the market is going to recover very, very slowly. So we have to expect that many companies will close down, and so that more and more people will lose the job. So more and more people will have less money to spend. So yes, I think that everybody in this industry hopes that that people will buy less, but will buy better. I mean, just saying that will buy less product, but with a higher quality. Products that can last, products that are sustainable, as everybody is saying. And for sure, we have a material, leather, that has all these characteristics. And I fully agree with what has been said before, that we need to tell the good story about leather. And we have a lot of good stories about leather. Leather can bring, history, tradition, nature. We have a lot of very positive messages to convey with leather. The only problem is that we have never been used to do it. We are, way behind the other materials marketing strategies. And we haven't developed the right tools. But, this is the tanning industry is a B2B business. So, all the efforts that were made by the tanneries up to now were, towards the clients. So in trying to convince the clients that this leather is good, this leather is better than the other, the leather is better than plastic or textile. And I think that now, and there are a lot of initiatives around the market about that, everybody is aware that our industry needs to talk more and more with the consumers. And right now, we absolutely urge to talk with the consumers, because we need to intercept any possible consumption trends that can arise in the next month. If you see also analysis or declaration from the brands about sales in these last weeks, and everybody's saying, look, okay, for sure, our retail shops has been suffering a lot, but the online shopping was okay, and so we recover a little bit through the online platform. But I think that for sure online shopping will increase more and more. But for the product that that are made with leather, well, online shopping is not real the perfect tool, because as I think Robert was saying before, leather is a material that needs to be touched. So if you want to spend 200 or 300 euro for shoes, and you are going to pay this amount for shoes made with leather because you want them to last, because you know that they are nice you want to touch it. So I don't think that online shopping is the right tool. So I think that for sure the tanning industry must invest much more in marketing and product communication towards clients, towards media, and towards consumers. It is not easy. And as I said, probably we have never been used to do this. But now it is like oxygen for us. If we lack it, we are going to stroke. So it's absolutely essential that the industry is aware of this. And if I can link to what Mike and Robert said before, I also agree that in this moment is very problematic moment. Only the companies, only the tanneries that has a robust financial condition, that has logistics and that an internal organization that can wait for a slow recovery on the market can survive, while a lot of others will suffer. And we know that all the financial instruments implemented by our government, by governments of other companies, in order to maintain employment, is not going to be last forever, for sure. Maybe until September, and after that we will see. After that we will see, and for sure we will lose some very, very good companies. We will see some concentration probably in the number of companies. We will see a reduction in terms of production volume, but this is a trend that anyway, if you see to the global figures, this is a trend that has not started in 2020. It has been has started some years ago. We know that the footwear industry has been consuming less leather for the last 4 or 5 years. And I think that we cannot be very, very optimistic on this concern for the future, apart from the coronavirus. And we have seen some substitution trends starting last year, big substitution trends also in the automotive industry. That was one of the client sector that was driving the demand of leather in the last years. In Italy, we are now, struggling about, the top fashion luxury clients. All this, hunger for new fashion, trendy, alternative materials made with whatever, And we need to strengthen our message. We need to make claims about leather that are simple and strong, because as we were saying, leather is sustainable. Leather has a lot of very positive message to convey. We need to strengthen this positive message to our clients and to our consumer, and make them understand that leather may be a little bit more expensive, but it's a material that can guarantee very good sales and very good, consumption experience for consumers.
Akhil, what key trends and changes in consumer behavior do you observe and anticipate in India?
The consumer spending is going to be definitely conservative this time. And I was also reading an article. It says that there has always been a surplus stock of items, clothing and footwear and many items since last 1 year. And we are already seeing that. There are a lot of discounts in various stores and so on. But post-pandemic is also going to be more. I think the buying from these houses should be really conservative now so that they do not end up again with a huge inventory. And I feel that India, under our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, has done excellent control of the COVID-19, as we could see that we are least affected country. And also this time, I always thank the medical fraternity of India and the world for saving our life, which is more important for us. Our lives are more important than anything. But going forward, I feel that 2021 will be a great year for all of us.
So you sound quite positive and quite optimistic, really, about the prospects. Mike, marketing has been mentioned, and you're obviously an expert in marketing, and you're observing consumer trends globally. Anyway, can you tell us a little bit about what big consumer trends you see developing or already happening, and what the consequences of those will be?
I think there are two really big moves that are very apparent. The center of gravity of the world economy has been steadily moving towards the east. The pandemic has accelerated that. The eastern countries, their governments, their administrations have handled the pandemic better than the Western countries. We don't have good logistics and good science knowledge amongst our politicians in the West, nor amongst our administration staff. We're some way behind. And so I think we're seeing the Eastern economies coming back much faster than in the West. And in addition, in the West, the group who are slowest to go back to normal life are the older people. So the wealth that was being spent over the next 5 years that we were depending on in the West from the over 60s is going to be a bit absent. And that means worldwide we're going to see a big acceleration towards Millennium and Generation Z consumers. Much more of a generation less and a generation rent and a different approach to consumer purchasing and what they think of consumer goods. Higher expectations of transparency, different expectations about receiving communications and where they gather their data and information. So our lines of communication will have to be different. The retail store is already changing. Asia is ahead on that because the acceleration with companies like JD.com and Alibaba took place after the SARS epidemic, which never really reached the West. So we're only just really seeing this acceleration online that has already been understood by the Eastern consumer. And the future purchasing is going to be much more of a shared experience between online and the physical shop. The physical shop's going to still be important, but it's going to be much more about the experience and much less about the transaction. And I do think that as a leather industry, where a large part of the purchase value of leather lies in the experience, while the ownership value lies in the development of the patina and in the longevity and in the possibility to repair if the article's properly designed. A lot of the purchase is about the look and the feel. But one of the areas that we are seeing and have seen, and that they anticipate will definitely remain, is the automobile, which is, as Robert said, going to have a tough time ahead. But consumers have been happy to specify and to purchase online and have the cars delivered to their house. Now, when consumers buy cars, now that you can't be real macho and look at the engine and check how many cylinders, because there's a big plastic case on top of the engine, the experience is about sitting in the car, getting out, having the touch and feel and the smell of the leather, and listening to the sound of closing the door. You're not going to have those experiences. How do we replicate that if the consumer's buying online? How do we make the consumer know that they're buying leather and there's value in it rather than plastic or textiles? So I'm hoping that more and more tanneries and organizations like Lucas will think about opening stores or pop-up shops around the world just to display leather, so the consumer can have an opportunity to touch and feel and learn about leather. Not big expensive places, but all over where they can really, really touch and feel. And I'm hoping that the industry will follow what Robert says and accelerate the repair shop concept, which, as you know, here in the UK has moved from an obscure little television program to a centre stage important one that consumers absolutely love. And every time that program is on our mainstream television, leather is in some way involved. Leather articles can be repaired, can be maintained, hold their history, hold all the things that Lucas said that's wonderful about leather. So I think there are opportunities that the leather industry, if we're thoughtful, can keep the experiential aspects of leather in the educational profile of the younger consumer, while accepting that consumers are changing, retail is changing, and the ways in which we are going to have to speak to consumers are also changing and interface with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going back to that, telling a successful story about leather and putting the experience and conveying the experience of leather, basically, again, isn't it? So to conclude this discussion, can we take any positives out of the coronavirus situation? I've asked this question previous panelists too, as I'm determined to find constructive angles and opportunities in this situation. So I'm interested to hear your perspectives on this. What do you think are the lessons learned, and has anything perhaps surprised you in a positive way about how people have coped with these unprecedented times and the nature of the pandemic? Akhil, I'll start with you.
In terms of the lessons that need to be learned after this pandemic, is that you need to have a very, very strong company. And you need to have reserves for all these calamities. And also the insurance, you need to cover your businesses against any such defaults, and also against any difficulties that you may arise. And also we are seeing a lot of bankruptcies now, and which is a really big concern to many of our suppliers in India. But I'm hoping that the economy will come back. And I think we thought, the world is going to end probably in March when we saw this difficulty, but now we see a hope, and it's a new world. It's a new beginning again after the COVID and the pandemic is over. And I think I'm having confidence that with all these difficulties, we still have survived, and we will survive for the future. And I'm hoping that 2021 will be a great year.
Excellent, thank you. And Robert, from the EU perspective?
Just before I answer that question, if I may, can I just say I completely am energised by the level of debate that Mike was leading there. Really thinking long and hard with rigour about the future. And I would say that the leather industry does need to do more of that. And there's three words I've got that I think we need to pursue. So collaboration, cooperation, and teamwork. The leather industry, to rise to the kind of challenges that Mike was raising there, has to learn to work together. And I don't think we're good enough at working together to market these tremendous stories to consumers. Needs shared resource and common goals and common teamwork and collaboration. So I'll answer your question now, but I felt that's a really important point to make. You know, we need people to come together to secure the future. In terms of positives out of COVID, there are always positives out of every situation in my world. And, you know, I've lived at home with my adult children who've come back home, and it has been a tremendous time of the family being back together again. And that's been common throughout Europe and elsewhere in the world. And I think that causes families and individuals to reflect on what's important. And I think it will cause people, I think, to think about how they spend their time and how they spend their money and what they spend it on and who they spend their time with. So I personally think the opportunity to buy better, to move away from this the chase to the bottom on price. I think there is an opportunity arising out of COVID to make the case for better quality, for better ethics, for better sustainability. And I think the consumer is ready to listen to that message if we can find the resources and the collaboration to give those messages to the consumer clearly. There's lots of others, but I would say that's the big commercial opportunity ahead of us.
You can see us all nodding along. Yeah, that's excellent. Luca, over to you. What is your positives out of this?
Well, I think that maybe the awareness that things can change really, really fast, and in an unexpected way for sure, and that we are, I think, just one big planet. I mean, we are on the same boat. So I agree with what Robert was saying, that our industries need to strengthen the cooperation and the collaboration inside the supply chain. Because we need to work together inside the supply chain more and more. Because yes, the industry has made a lot of efforts in the last year regarding sustainability, ethics, social responsibility, all this kind of stuff. And we cannot stop to do it. We need to improve, absolutely, our efforts on that. And other positive. Well, I have been a little bit surprised by the behavior of Italian people during the lockdown, because the big majority immediately understand the gravity of the situation, and even those that for age and health condition were not have not felt the risk of the COVID. Anyway, they have behaved very safely to preserve those people that have a higher risk, like old people, of people with injuries and with sickness. So I was surprised by the level of maturity and understanding of the situation of the citizen of Italy, and I still see it even now that the situation is improving. Week after week, if you go out in the streets, you see everybody wearing mask. Everybody, outside and inside, people, understand. And I hope that this can be helpful, because we don't know the development of the situation. But I think that if we still are a little bit cautious in, like during summer, maybe in autumn we can feel a little bit more relaxed and confident. And as I was saying before, get back to reality as soon as possible. Next time that you come to Milan, I will invite you to visit our Spazio Linapelle. There is a showroom that Linapelle opened in the square next to Unici Linapelle offices, in a wonderful square. And we host exhibitions and fashion presentation. It's a very nice place in front of a medieval tower. So I think it goes in the direction you were mentioning before.
I think that's absolutely fantastic. I think we need hundreds of these. We need everyone to engage. So I think that really emphasizes the importance of the collaboration and cooperation that Robert's mentioning. We need to be taking our industry to the consumer and talking directly to the consumer. And that means, we don't talk about corrected grain. We talk about natural leather. We talk about the beauty of leather, the longevity of leather. We don't take all our technical terms to the consumer. We talk in comprehensive language, and we change our game. And I'm really hoping that will be one of the big outcomes. I think everything you look at how society is likely to move, buying less but buying better, buying with longevity in mind, not garments that last 2 washes and then get thrown away, or shoes that last 6 months and then get put into a landfill somewhere because they're too difficult to dismantle, but shoes that you will take to a cobbler in your local high street, and he will repair them, or she will repair them, and they'll come back with you proud of how new they look, and you'll get another year or two's wear out of them. It could be a transformation, because leather is perfect for that, as long as we talk about it in a positive way and help the whole supply chain explain those stories. And it's important that we do, because if the consumer doesn't understand leather, then we can't get the right value for it. And that value has to cascade right through the supply chain, so that every worker in that supply chain gets properly remunerated. Because I think the one thing that's come through from this has been the importance of community and diversity. It's played a great part in the people who have helped to keep society ticking over. Some people who perhaps we've not thought enough about over the last decades have been vital to keeping the wheels of society ticking over. And I think one of our roles going forward is to remember that we have a role in community, a role in keeping people first, a role in perhaps even right now, those who are wealthy amongst us, to bring in some of these school leavers and university graduates who are departing into an environment that's very uncertain. There's no work. It's an opportunity to help and pick up some wonderful new employees with additional apprenticeships, if we can afford it, and new management routes. And it would be good right now in our leather industry to increase our diversity, to lower our average age, and bring our companies better in tune with the 21st century that we are now in the toughest way.
So, Mike, as I understand, is the sort of the community aspect probably the biggest positive that you're taking away from this pandemic?
Biggest opportunity, and I think we've already shown that it's important, it's working, and the leather industry is good at it. Our tanneries are part of the community, and I think over history, for all we talk about the negatives about tanning with smell and the rest, our workforces are part of the community. And where you see tanneries opening to local citizens and families, they get huge attendances. And we see that around the UK on these city open days. We see it in the Netherlands and in other places. Where you open your tanneries, the people come, are interested, are fascinated. And I'm sure Luca's finding with their downtown facility, the consumers are really, really interested.
Yeah, thank you. It's a lovely sentiment to end on, and everyone's made such good points indeed. Thank you. So this concludes our webinar. Thank you very much to all our panelists once again for joining me today, and especially also to JBS Kuros and the National Wildlife Federation for partnering with us to present these webinars during these unprecedented and testing times. I hope that this webinar and our panelists have been able to raise a number of issues and perhaps offer some solutions or perspectives on how to navigate through the crisis. We will share any questions from the audience which we did not cover today with the panel. We will also be posting the full webinar online shortly in case you would like to listen to it again. A link to the recording will also be sent out to everyone who registered. Finally, you will now be asked a short survey about today's webinar, which will give us valuable feedback and ensure that we continue to offer content that is of interest to you. ILM will be hosting more free-to-attend webinars as well as new podcasts over the coming weeks and months, so please keep an eye out for future topics on the ILM website. Our contact details can be seen on the screen in front of you now. For more information, please visit the events and podcast sections on internationalleathermaker.com to download or register for our upcoming webinars, podcasts, and other leather industry-related content. Thank you all again so very much, and goodbye.